and welcome to the Quarantine Room Podcast. I'll be your host, Vince Falsone, and I'll be joined by my co-hosts.
Amarise McGlynn.
Silvestri.
Eric Castellanos.
And Mazabin Yasmin.
The focus of today's podcast will be American culture and will be presented by Amarise McGlynn.
Alright, so American culture. American culture encompasses all the customs and traditions of the United States. Influenced multicultural ethos that includes African Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, Latin Americans, and multiple more ethnic groups. Right, this results in a melting pot, which is the mixture of different cultures due to a large amount of immigration. So if we take that information and we apply it, we can reason that immigration is the main cause of our cultural development. We can see this in some of the influence in like the multiple languages that is spoken around the States, which is like around 350 recorded languages, possibly more. It's also the reason why American culture can relate to so many other cultures. Right, so the mixing of many cultures is a good thing when everyone is accepting of change. But there are many who are culturally intolerant and have issue with this, even to this day. We see it a lot with the riots now, Black Lives Matter. This intolerance of different cultures, traditions, and ethnic groups does happen a lot and it leads to racism. Now, with racism, it's extremely unhealthy to the country and its people, and as we can see now, it causes a lot of issues between the government and the people. So, for example, right, let's say the government system. If African Americans make up around 12 to 13% of the American population, and yet African Americans are more than half of the people incarcerated in American prisons, it doesn't add up, So there's another thing. How is it that a black man is 9 times more likely to get arrested than a white man? And a Hispanic person is 3 times more likely to get ICE called on them and 5 times more likely to be questioned for possession of legal papers than anyone else in this country. See, this is systematic racism. So systematic racism is extremely problematic in this country, and as you can see, and you may be wondering what this has to do with culture, right? So let me give you a definition of culture real quick. It's the customs, arts, and social institutions and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. Well, many people base themselves off of what happens around them and what they experience, more what they see, right? So you can see that issues like this can influence a person's behavior and lifestyle immensely. This leans towards American identity and how people will gather in their social groups. See, this is where the separation of the American people begins. It's where it's most prominent. It becomes African American culture, Mexican American culture, Asian American culture, Latin American culture, Jewish American culture, Armenian, Iran, Polish, Italian, Palestinian, Afghan, Jordanian, Turkish, and the list goes on. All of these become branches of American culture, but not American culture itself, right? American culture would be all of them together. So there's nothing wrong with it. America promotes the idea of freedom, and that includes cultural freedom, which also includes religious and other traditions that could be included into the culture. But the issue is that we're all doing it separately. It's not one culture anymore, It's so divided, and that's what I really wanted to get to with my topic about American culture. So if you guys want to discuss now, we can. Guys? Anybody want to discuss?
Okay, like, is there like a specific question that you want to ask?
No, not really. I just want to, how do you feel about like American culture? Like, does it even affect you? Like the differences in it?
I don't think it does. Personally, like,
It's a mess.
I'm
gonna say that.
I agree.
American culture itself is a mess.
Yeah.
American culture isn't American culture. There is no American culture to begin with.
I suppose that's true.
Yeah, that's
There's no American culture to begin with.
Because like American culture is just a collective of immigrants, really.
Yeah,
It's
like
so
what is
divided.
American culture?
because there's
That's it. Yeah.
different a lot of people from different countries have gathered here, especially in the United States, or at least in the especially here in New York City. We have such a diverse area filled with different demographics, and it's just like certain areas are literally labeled after their origin countries. Like we have Chinatown, Little Italy, we have Yemen, Little Yemen, I mean, and then we have it goes on and on and on.
Koreatown and everything.
Koreatown too, yeah, all
Yeah,
those.
like
And
this.
most like stuff that we have is just a collection or like an amalgamation of like everything that immigrants have passed along from their like native country.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
only American culture there would be the indigenous and native people, but like we don't have a lot of that anymore
Yeah, they're very
from the start.
misrepresented in the
Like,
country.
wasn't there like a new day dedicated to that now?
Indigenous
Christopher
Day?
Columbus Day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah, like they changed
Yeah,
it to
so
Indigenous
they
People Day,
wanted
right?
to, but I don't think they
yeah,
actually did that because it did spark a lot of uproar in like Italian American communities because the claim is that I guess he is Italian and they were like, hey, that's not fair, even though his horrible background of mass genocide, I guess. But they in
Yeah.
some places I think they went through with that, but other places they didn't.
Certain states celebrate
Well,
it, certain states
yeah.
don't.
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot of history is just kind of whitewashed, you know? Just it have like more of a happy-go-lucky attitude towards it, and it just like American culture was always based on like, hey, everything we did was good, and like everything we fought against were bad people. When in reality,
When
they're
actually not like that at
yeah,
all.
Well, yeah,
It's
it's
a
always like
bunch
the
of
victor's view
who
of
were
things.
oppressed and decided that let's try and have our chances at America, only to find out it's the same as everywhere else.
yeah. Like for example, even with like Catholic or Christian immigrants that were Spain or from Spain, Italy, Irish, all that, they were still like kind of oppressed in America because they weren't like here for generations. They weren't Protestant. They weren't like
Definitely, yeah.
from generational wealth. They were still discriminated against. But it's just like people, especially of like different language and like of a different language of a different origin than Europe, they were much more targeted against in America.
Well,
And that brings up the racist issue that we have in America now. You know, the racial intolerance, religious intolerance, cultural intolerance, things like that. I wanted to speak on that, but it was kind of difficult to put that into cultural perspective. But we could lead into that now if you want.
sure.
Well, like,
All right,
like
so
it's kind of a George Floyd. Is that what you want to connect it to?
I mean, we can, but it's been going on for longer than that, and it's not just about the black community. You know, it's
Yeah,
other brown,
yeah.
colored,
Let's start
other
with like
dark skinned people.
other like topic because like going into this like whole like major George Floyd and Black Lives Matter is gonna get controversial. So we should start with like other races first
yeah,
to go
and
into
also
this
there's a
big
lot of
movement.
yeah, and there's also like there's a lot of context needed just to get to the point we are at right now.
Yeah, because this doesn't just start overnight. This is like years and years of
Yep.
racial discrimination and racial oppression, systematic and just like by the people themselves. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But let's continue on. So, on the topic of like groups that are oppressed besides the black people, right? We'll get into that later. Like brown colored people, Caribbean, Pacific Islanders. What else?
Actually, like, okay, so
Hispanics.
like Asians. So you know how like when the coronavirus first came in, like
Mhm.
people were like discriminating Asian people for like they brought it in and all that. Like there's
Yeah.
like some videos of like people bullying like this Asian girl for like they said like, oh, she has a coronavirus, she gave it to people or like brought it to the United
Or
States.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
or
like
even attacking them too.
Yeah, there's
exactly.
like
Like I
video
feel like
But
Asian, like
that's just so wrong.
normal people, how people see Asian, not like other part of Asia, but like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, whatever. Like whenever they see those type of people, it's just very normalized. Like no one really cares. Like I think every day, like someone makes a Chinese joke or anything like that, and just like no one says anything about it because it's so like whatever, like no one cares about that. But when it comes to like another minority group, everyone's so heated about it, and it's just like why not for them as well.
And I think
Well,
that's really the issue with the racism we have now, you know?
yeah, like for example, there was the model minority uh,
Mm-hmm.
thing, which is basically like they took the best of the best minorities and made sure and gave them like privileges that not other majorities were able to have. Like it mainly affected Asian people, and it made sure that they were able to have like easier access to education and able to succeed more in life. And that's why and so so people like in power, especially white people, they could be like, hey, look, this minority was able to do it, so why can't these
What can
minorities be able to do it? Exactly. Yeah, it was more so as like we'll toss one of them a bone just so that we have like the basis of like, yeah, we made America equal for everybody, you guys are just lazy.
That's similar to like the idea of like appeasement. Like
Yeah.
they're not tackling the problem, they're just appeasing the people who the problem is based around. And I feel like it, like, just to harken back to like current events, because obviously that's the most interesting thing that's happening right now. I feel like that's what's going to happen with this. Is it's going to be less of like a big change. It's just going to be appeasement. It's just going to be like, oh, okay, fine, this is what you want. There you go.
Let's just give
That's
it
what
to
you get.
you.
But you're not going to get anything more than what you ask for. Like, you have to be
Yeah.
specific on what you want, or else it's not going to happen. Like a blanket statement, like usually protests happen, and that's what it is. It's a blanket statement. Oh, equality or whatever the case is. That may work in some cases, but in the large majority, unless you're specifying what you want, there's nothing's gonna happen. Because then it's like, oh, well, you never said you wanted that. Oh, it's tough. Like, that's what usually happens with cases like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's understandable. Because it's like there's all that emotion at the beginning of the protest that like once it starts getting traction and all that other stuff, they're lost in what their real objective is, because they have, like you said, the blanket statement, but they don't have the solutions for the underlying problems that could fix everything that they want.
Exactly.
At this point
Yeah.
in time, they're just trying to be heard, but they haven't set any concrete foundations on like what they wanted to do after the protests and stuff like that.
No. Exactly.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
it's not
I feel
even
like now.
that. It's not even that. It's just like they're not specific into what they want. They want to be like, oh, we want to end racism and like police brutality, but there's no action to how to stop that. They're just like angry into like just doing whatever, but there's no foundation to it.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that's what
would
we're trying to
disagree with
say.
that. Well, like at least for right now, it's starting to change where they have like an actual like goal. So more people are leaning towards like defunding the police and
But in reality, what
changing
is that really going to do?
What's the
Like,
purpose of
say if
that
we
though?
do
Like,
defund the police,
be
right?
because like the police make like at least here in New York we have they had like a budget of 50.6 billion dollars in last year, and they spent millions of dollars on like settlements for like abuse for police brutality cases. They want to rather defund the police, so they would focus on, instead of like training people how to like shoot, how to defend themselves, they have more of a focus on like de-escalating situations, and then like focusing on actually working with the people around them in the community to really stop problems from happening before it occurs,
There's
rather than.
an interesting. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to get
That's
this in.
fine.
There's an interesting like situation with that. So talking about like the training that's involved with police, you require less training to be a police officer than to be a hairdresser, to be somebody to be a barber. Basically, you could be a barber with you require like double the training that a police officer
Yeah.
does, and a police officer
yeah.
Yeah.
has a gun that can dictate the life of a person. They require less training than a person who's cutting your hair.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
unbelievable.
I know. I saw
Like,
so many articles and videos on that.
It's
Yeah,
ridiculous, actually.
they want to have like longer training times instead of
definitely,
a six
definitely.
month period.
Yeah.
That's definitely a necessary thing they need to have,
You
Honestly,
you
I
because
think
know.
that
Shouldn't they have a
we
mental
should.
evaluation too?
They
yeah, they
should.
want to have a schedule evaluation every 6 months to a year for officers to determine whether they're in like a right place of mind to be enforcing laws. Because like the excuse that most officers have when they're charged, not charged, when like police brutality happens or they kill an unarmed person, is they feel threatened. As a police officer with those that training in attacking and having a gun and all those items on you, you shouldn't feel threatened by like just a guy. that wants to punch you. Because in that situation, you're supposed to be the person in control. You're not supposed to be like, "Hey, you're trying to attack me. I'm gonna beat you for that." Like the best thing you should do is try to like redirect them so you can de-escalate the situation and limit the possibility of outrage.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I get that too, but like with that, right? You know the new video of like police officer pushing this old man, right?
Yes.
Right? And then
Yes, with the
so
cane,
the
right?
old man, the two police officers got suspended for cracking open a dude's head, right? An old
Yeah.
dude's head.
Mm-hmm.
While 57 or some, I don't know the exact number, or
57
like
officers.
something, resigned because those two police officers got suspended. It's just like
Yeah.
these cops, they either care or they don't, right? So there's no point. Like there are good cops, of course, but you know, majority of them, they have no choice but to be around the bad cops because their job in the end of the day, right? But like
At the end of
when
the
you
day,
look
you
at,
still need to pay your bills, you
you
know?
need to pay your bills, you have a family to take care of, and you have a whole life, right? You can't
Yeah.
get at them for that. But doing these things that's like right now is just like even harder because now like more police that are bad are coming out, and then eventually you're not gonna have no cops in general.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like the main goal, really. They want to like people want to abolish the police system and build it from the ground up again. Because like originally, the original intent for the police were as like slave hunters. Like if your slave got loose, they would send the police with to go hunt them down and bring them
Which
back
would
to your
be,
plantation.
which is how state troopers were based off, and then we had our own smaller police systems in the inner cities.
Yep, and that's also why gangs were in place too, or at least the Bloods and Crips. They were originally made to protect their communities from police brutality and to stop. I'm not sure about stopping crime, but like to just protect themselves because they
Mm-hmm.
understood that the police,
People of the
especially
same groups.
yeah, like
Yeah.
around the conception of their gangs, they understood that the police
They were
were
being
targeting
targeted,
people.
and
They were being
yep.
targeted. Yep,
So
and
they
they're
banded
like,
together.
could you repeat that, Kyle?
So they banded together and like decided to protect themselves instead of just being focused one by
They
one.
decided since our
Yeah.
government system is not going to protect us, we have to do something to protect ourselves, which is how that came to be. You know,
Which technically, by the Second Amendment, it would be fine, especially if they own guns too, because the Second Amendment states
the right to
means
bear arms.
the right to bear arms as long as there's like a well-regulated militia. You could argue that the gangs were a well-regulated militia, but I'm not sure about exactly what happened. But they had a falling out, and that's why you had the Bloods and Crips against each other. And it's like I'm pretty sure most Bloods and Crips don't even know the actual reason either. I feel like they've just been conditioned to hate each other. You
Yeah,
know,
and this
there
goes into
was
like, continue.
oh okay. And so there was this experiment they did. So basically, they had five monkeys, and they had one banana in the middle. And well, you had to climb this ladder to get the banana. And for every monkey that attempted to go to that banana, they would spray them with a hose, and then they would spray all of them, even if it was just one. And so slowly but surely, they switched out one monkey with another monkey that had no idea of it, and they just kept spraying them until the point where it was a completely new group of monkeys that had no idea what had happened before, but they all knew not to go for the banana. And like you could relate that to a lot of society itself because we're just all conditioned by the same thing.
I see where you're going with that. Like how they're just like conditioned to like know not to do something, or like to not even try to do something for themselves. You see what I mean?
Like
Yeah,
what they
yeah.
would get punished if they do like a certain action. Is that what like the experiment was for?
Yeah, it was to see how like how like if people if they didn't have that same punishment anymore because all of them knew not to do that, but they didn't know why not to go for the banana in the middle. Like they had
Okay,
no
got it.
understanding of why. Yeah.
like normal things. Like you wouldn't like cut the line. Like that's how I'm connecting them. Like is this something normal to them? Like you would
Well,
like normally you wouldn't like cut a line or like skip people or like do something wrong because there would be a consequence. That's what I'm connecting it to.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, you could say
it's
that.
like
Like,
basically when you see other people not doing something, you would automatically think maybe I shouldn't as well because no one else
It's
is
not
trying.
beneficial to me
yeah,
Yeah.
and like you would
it'll
understand,
end
you wouldn't know
me in the
why they
long
would.
run, you know?
Yeah,
All right, so I get what you're saying with that, and you're saying that leads to like how people know not to do certain things, or like how they're oppressed or conditioned to be oppressed, you know?
yeah.
Okay, so let's go on from that, right? And let's talk about sexual orientation, right? So,
Hmm.
like, the gradual change of like sexual orientation and like how that was okay or how not okay it was before and how it's starting to slowly be accepted now. How can you guys see
Yeah.
that in like, you know, racist groups like segregation, stuff like that? You know, what are we doing with this now? You see, like, what I'm trying to say is that you see how we have discriminated people, right? And non-tolerant
Hmm.
people. That also falls into like people who are into same-sex relationships or into like multiple people. You know, polyamory, bisexual, gay, lesbian. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, sexuality and homosexuality, it just goes, so it depends. There's the society of like everybody like having the norms, like if it's normal or not, right? And whether they accept it. And there's also the norms of whatever racial ethnic group you're from as well, because like a lot of the, other than the US, if you think about it, and a lot of European countries, most of Asia and like other parts of the world, they're not really open about those stuff. So it's kind of
Yeah,
hard for them to like see through it as something so normal, you know? Like in the US, we have all types of people. We have all types of countries, like people from all types of countries and race, religion, whatever, right? So it's just getting normalized right now. But even within the US, we have religious groups who don't like that, or like, because it's a sin if you think about it. And then there are
Mm-hmm.
other groups like who are homophobic because they
they
don't
were just
think
They're
that
conditioned
created.
for that.
it's
They were
it's a
conditioned for that.
condition, like it's a mental disease or something like that, you know? People
Yeah, they
have
were
like,
conditioned to believe that.
exactly. So it's just like, it's something you can't normalize unless like, specific, everybody like becomes like one with it, it's society versus your own people as well.
It's like
Yeah,
they have to be open-minded, you know?
Well,
yeah.
so
I
oh, no, you go ahead.
no, you can go, Vince. You can go.
I was just gonna bring it back to what you was saying about like certain places like being okay with it, like the United States. Even though it may seem like they're not like in the United States, people aren't okay with it. But if you think about it, like in that sense, we're pretty tolerant for things of that nature. And I partially think that that's because other places, like other nations, some of them, Middle Eastern countries especially,
Take it to the stream.
are based in like a theocracy, which is a government that's
Religious
run by
government.
their religion. So by that logic, that's their law, is to not be a different sexual orientation. But here it's a democracy, so who cares? You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you
You
want
have a
in
choice.
reality. Yeah, exactly. You have that
Yeah,
choice of being whatever you want to
Hmm.
be.
yeah.
And I
Well,
like
like,
how you brought that up.
Thank you.
No, continue. I just like how you brought that up.
I was gonna say how like Mazepin mentioned religion. I feel like it's kind of like hypocritical in some religions because like at least in Christianity or Catholicism, it's not to target them. It's just like the Bible itself has been translated over and over again into different languages, and it's just like I obviously some parts of it must have been like mistranslated, like from its original conception of the Bible. Like some people say, like that part where it says, "Man shall not lay with another man." It was supposed to actually be a man shouldn't lay with a child. Like you shouldn't be it's a sin to be a pedophile rather than being a sin to be a homosexual or being uh, lesbian or whatever really. And also I feel like it's been like a norm to be straight, I guess.
Yeah, of
And like the
course.
more, yeah, and like the more and more we break down like gender norms and social norms, I feel like we lose that sense of being straight is normal, you know?
Yeah. No, I
And I feel like
Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like that's more important because it's like your sexuality really doesn't have an impact on the person you are.
I actually,
It,
if you'll allow me, I want to harken back to something that you actually did years like last year for ELA, right? I don't know
sure,
if you remember. You did a your topic was toxic masculinity in certain,
I
you know,
remember.
whatever. That I feel like that is also a huge part of it. I feel like
Yes.
in certain like races, let's say, or in certain like social statuses of people, it's seen as okay to be
To have that toxic
to be
masculinity?
exactly to have that,
Yeah,
and like that's fine. That's just their norm, right? They don't know
I
any
completely
better,
agree.
you know. And I feel like that what you said in that that piece, I guess, or that presentation was spot on with this subject. It just it that's what it is. Because like you know, some people are more tolerant to it than others, and that's but the reason for that is there is no reason, right? It could be anything. It could be okay. Well, maybe the amount of money that you make determines how tolerant you are to certain things, or how whatever, you know, like your race depends on it too. I think as well as your
Yeah.
cultural background, like for what Mazin was saying and what I was saying about the different nations having, you know, their kinds of
Even
people
like
there.
where you're living now, right? So say you're on the West Coast, or say you're on the East Coast, or in the South. People in the South are like, not to be like judgmental, but like a lot of them have this idea that, you know, it's not really right, because a lot of people are very religious down there,
Yeah,
and it's just like a really big group of religious people, you know.
it is.
And then
Yeah,
in the West Coast, it's maybe a bit, it's a bit more lenient, and then East Coast is also a bit more lenient, but it's still, you still see it, you know. Like there are
yeah,
always going to be people who are more into their religion and culture and believe that changing like sexual orientation, like from being straight to being gay or lesbian or bisexual or even pan queer, is an issue, a sin, you know.
Definitely, yeah.
yeah,
And it's going to be hard for people to come to terms with that, but eventually they're going to have to see it as just a thing that's happening now, like they can't stop it, you know.
Yep.
yeah.
And I feel like,
Eh,
sorry, I just wanted to get this point in really
It's why you
quick.
can go. Yeah,
So I feel like it's become more like normal, right? Stuff like
yeah,
that. And obviously, just as time goes on, whatever. But I feel like the mass of like super important people that have gone, you know, that have done this. You know, obviously, the Kardashian or what was his name? I'm sorry, or her name now.
uh, Chris
Caitlyn.
Oh,
Caitlyn.
Caitlyn Jenner,
Caitlyn
Caitlyn
Jenner.
I
Jenner,
feel
yeah.
like
Caitlyn.
that was
Yes.
like obviously everybody says it. Oh, that was the breakthrough, but it really was. It really was. This guy he was a super athlete, and then he became a woman, and I feel like
Yeah,
Yeah.
that just like broke people's minds
And
to where it was like, oh, it's wrong.
it's
To
actually amazing.
now it's that was my
yeah,
hero, and now he's a woman. That's great, right? That's super interesting. That you could see how the dynamic changes. How that was like the breakthrough to the older generation was, hey, I remember this person being super famous and whatever, and now they're still famous, but now they're a woman.
They're a
It's
woman.
I feel like people were accepting of that, and I think if that happens more, the the I guess the
People who are openly like about their sexual intentions, or like about themselves,
yeah,
right? Like transgenders, like as we saw, as you mentioned, Caitlyn Jenner. Like that's an amazing transition, you know?
it was.
yeah.
Or like how Jaden Smith comes out as gay, you know?
Yep.
Things like that. And he's a
Hmm.
very popular
Popular person,
rapper.
yeah,
Yes, and he was an actor, he was a rapper, he's done a lot of things. He's even done modeling. And so
yeah,
there these people coming out into the world and just like making a change. It's amazing. And
yeah.
no, keep going.
I was gonna
Oh,
say how like there's a lot of stigma that like being like LGBT communities or plus LGBTQ plus communities and all that are like a more recent trend, and that it only happens with people. like it's observable that like a lot of animals have shown like bisexual and gay tendencies even, and it's like it's
Uh,
pretty great. I did research. There is one form of monkey or
Eric,
primate. Yeah.
sorry to cut you off a little bit, but we're almost done with the episode, so I
Oh,
just
it's
want
all
to
right.
start closing out statements. All right.
All right, it's fine.
So thank you all for listening in and discussing on this topic. And next time in the quarantine room, we will be discussing artificial intelligence presented by Kyle. Goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.